Welcome to the Boxing Talk Show. Fair but firm. With the Hall of Fame boxing referee. I'm Joe Cortez. And co-host John Zamel for all of Las Vegas. Come on, guys. Let's touch them up. Tree fight. I'm Joe Cortez. Fair but firm.
Good morning, my dear friends out there. Boxing capital of the world. Joe Cortez with the Fair but firm show here with my co-host John Zimmer. John, we had a little snow this past couple of days.
My gosh, yes.
In Las Vegas, we think that we're here in the middle of the desert, and if you think it would be nice and sunny, which it most of the time.
Yeah.
Out of 365 days a year, I think we have like 345 days of sunny and everything.
I agree with you.
But this past weekend, we had a couple inches of snow.
That was crazy, man.
Crazy. And last week, we had a good fight. Leo Santa Cruz
versus Rafael Rivera. I think we were surprised at the showing that Rivera put on. He came and they put on a great show, just like most of these PBC tickets have been. It's been a lot of action, a lot of back and forth, and I was impressed. Leo Santa Cruz never really seemed in trouble to me, but it wasn't like it was easy, you know?
Yeah, no, it was not an easy fight for him, but
No.
you know, sometimes you need that kind of work, because sometimes you get out there and you start knocking guys off in 1 or 2 rounds, and what happens is, like, you never seem to be progressing, like going up the ladder the way you should as far as skills are concerned.
Absolutely.
But he goes out there and he also has a good knockout ratio, but when he comes against top opposition, he really he gets that out there, and that's what makes him a better fighter.
Yeah, he wins with volume, and he does it a lot, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, he throws over 1,000 punches a fight. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy's he's a workhorse.
Yeah, there's not too much of a ring rust on Leo Santa Cruz.
Oh.
Anyway, going to what's going on tonight.
Yeah.
We have some good fights.
I'm excited because as soon as we get out of here, I'm gonna go get some stuff and I'm gonna start watching, because that's what I love. My favorite thing about these fights is when we have British fights. They usually the main event will come on around 2. So if you care about the undercard at all, I mean, by the time we get home and change, it's like it's that time. The show's over at noon. You guys better start getting ready. You know.
Exactly. You know, I'm looking forward to today's fight because.
You want me to introduce him?
Yeah, please.
All right, tonight we have, for the main event, we have James DeGaulle versus Chris Eubank Jr. Chris Eubank Jr., famously the son of Chris Eubank. He had a lot of promise coming up. He lost to Billy Joe Saunders, and the last time we saw him in a high-profile fight was against George Groves in the semifinal of the World Boxing Super Series, super middleweight edition. James DeGaulle also has lost to George Groves.
Right.
He's 33 years old. He's kind of showing some rust. This is a big fight for both of them. One of them, Eubank's here to prove that this is what, you know, that he's worth being in the talks for the greatest in that division and among the best boxers in Britain. And DeGaulle's here to prove that he still has something left in the tank. He's a 2-time world champion, so this is it's going to be a fun one. And on the undercard, we have one of your favorites, Joe Joyce, a guy who I always refer to as a kid, even though he's like 10 years younger tin me, because he's
33.
He's only like 5 years younger or older than me. I mean, because he's a prospect. He's only fought 7 fights, but he's an older prospect, and he's a big, handsome babyface heavyweight with a lot of charisma and some good movement, and he's taking what was supposed to be a step up in competition against Bermain Stavern, the former WBC heavyweight champion of the world, but it doesn't really seem like it's going to be the step up in competition that it seemed. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Well, Stavern is a former WBC heavyweight champion when he beat Chris Arreola, but then he came back, and Deontay Wilder ended up knocking him out.
Current WBC world heavyweight champion.
Exactly, and took the title from Stavern. So, but now Joey.
So Joyce.
Joyce is a young, like you said, baby face, young fighter. Well, he's 33, 34 years of age, but he's a former Olympic silver medalist.
Yes, sir.
A nice young man, very personable. He has trained here in Las Vegas, and he brings a lot of talent. I think he can go a long ways in the heavyweight division. And I think, you know, heavyweights develop a little later than the lighter fighters.
Absolutely.
For some reason or another, they develop later.
Their bodies develop a little later.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll tell you, it's going to be a good fight, good stepping stone for Joyce, because Joey Joyce needs to get to that level now. He's been there, but
because he's older, man. He doesn't have the time that other prospects have.
Exactly,
you know?
and that's what happens in boxing. So now it's the time, and I think they got the perfect opponent for him. Now, Stavern says he's in great condition, better than that. But you know what? He came in 20 pounds heavier than he did his last fight. You see the pictures of him doing the weigh-in, man. He looked like a big piece of flab meat hanging there. I mean, it doesn't look like it's going to go more than 3 or 4 rounds. Man. It's not going to go more than 4 rounds. I think maybe Joey is going to really end up stopping him.
Agreed. Now, Bermane Stiverne is a gentleman who made his way up through the ranks. He won the WBC heavyweight title, like Joe said, by beating Chris Arreola for the second time. It was a vacant title. He lost it when he went the distance with Deontay Wilder, the first man to do so, but he ended up losing the decision against him. And then in the rematch, anyone who is listening to this show, I'm sure, knows exactly what happened. But just to recap, it was one of the more dominant defeats we've ever seen. He threw 4 punches, landed 0, got knocked down 3 times, eventually knocked out cold through his guard, came in looking very overweight, came in looking disinterested, came in just looking bad, not like someone fighting for the world championship of the world. And tonight, he's coming in 20 pounds heavier than that.
Yeah, well, when he fought Deontay Wilder, he came in, I don't think sometimes you win a championship and you're champion of the world, and kind of like, instead of being more focused and say, I want to go all the way, I'm going to stay at the best shape because I'm going to be at the top, everybody going to want my title. Yeah. Let me stay sharper. Let me stay. No, he went the other way.
He did. He seemed, well, the first time he fought him, it was...
He lowered his guards. When you lower your guards, you know what happens? You're going to get beaten. That's just what happens.
When you're fighting Deontay Wilder, man.
Yeah.
Unless you're Tyson Fury.
And now he's trying to come back. I think he really just was in for the payday.
I think at this point, he definitely is. I mean, he made a big show of it. He came out and was like, talking about how, when I fought, I was embarrassed after my last fight against Wilder. I'm refocused. This is the best I've ever been. I'm ready to come back and reclaim what's mine. And really, it's just a 40-year-old fat former champion doing some posturing and some lip service, I think, at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I think that what we're going to have to end up doing is just, think about this heavyweight division, where they're going to be going. We know we already got Anthony Joshua. Mm-hmm. We have Tyson Fury,
yes, sir,
who's like the guy that stocks went through the roof, even though he got a draw against Deontay Wilder. And of course, let's talk a little bit about Fury. Now he signed a deal with
Fury just signed an $80 million deal with Top Rank and ESPN to be co-promoted for his next 5 fights. Apparently, they sent a deal to Deontay Wilder to try and make the rematch still on. But from what we've heard, BoxingScene.com reported that they had inside information saying that in order for him to take the deal they offered Wilder, basically said that he'd have to fight somebody else on ESPN Plus, and then he'd get an opportunity to come fight Fury on the second deal. And it was a 5-fight deal, apparently, what they're offering him, which is not something that he wants. He just wants to fight Fury one time. So it's not looking great for that rematch right now. But Fury came out today and said, I want it. I'm talking to Frank Warren. I'm talking to Bob Arum, and I'm telling them this is the fight I want. So I guess we'll see, but good for him. His family's fed. We never want to think badly about anybody like that, but kind of is what it is.
Exactly. Anyway, what's happening with the boxing game now is there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of money being put on the table for all these fighters, more than ever before. I guess with all the social media, there's a lot of tension going around the world, especially with United Kingdom. They're developing such great talent over there. It's good for the U.S. fighters because now they know we got competition. It wasn't just home base here. Now it's spread all over the world.
It's everywhere.
Globally, so that's good for boxing and for the fans. The fans can see that there's talent all over the world. It was just a matter of time of them getting the good trainers out there to teach them, how to use.
Absolutely. This sport is so global now, man. I mean, like we said, we had news this week about a Ghanan fighter and one about a Thai fighter. I mean, that's how exciting it is.
Okay, guys, we're going to go into a little brief commercial, and don't go away because we have so much, but we have a special guest named Eva Futch, Eddie Futch, a famous Hall of Famer, trainer, one of the best who trained for Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Riddick Bowe. He was one of the best, so we're going to talk to his wife, talk about his history. We'll be right back. Fans, we're back here with the Fair But Firm show here with Joe Cortez and my co-host John Zimmer. We had a trainer, one of the best of all time, John.
Yes, sir.
And this guy, Eddie Futch, very special man. He was so low-key, humble as they come. And yet he has some of the best fighters in the history of boxing. We could talk about Joe Frazier, Wayne McCullough. Mm-hmm. He had Ken Norton, Riddick Bowe, just to name a few that he trained. He trained over 25 world champions.
That's amazing.
And I just want to... We have a special guest, Eva Futch. You on the line there?
Hi, Joe. What a pleasure.
Good. It's a pleasure to have you on the phone here today. And I know that a lot of our fans out there know who the great, famous Eddie Futch, who he was. And can you tell us a little bit about how you guys met? You met him and where? And I know you're from Switzerland. And He was from Philadelphia, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about Eddie Futch's career?
Oh, okay. Well, we met when I was a boxing judge in the amateurs up in Reno.
Okay.
And a friend of a Swedish boxing legend, because I'm from Sweden,
Yes.
introduced us
Sweden.
and apparently thought we would be a match. And it seemed very unlikely then because of, I think, that he was a bit older, as he said to his biographer. And that is so funny. But anyway, and about his career, he was born in Mississippi, and then the family migrated to Detroit. And so as a young man, he was actually a semi-pro basketball player.
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
Well, he was a point guard, and he played, I have a beautiful photo of it, against a team that not much later became known as the Harlem Globetrotters.
Wow.
I know. And a friend of his suggested that, hey, why don't you try this boxing thing? Because back in the day, there were only two major sports in America. Basically, boxing was huge, and then baseball. And there were so many boxing clubs in Detroit at that time. And he was already 20, and so he went along, tried it out, and find himself immersed in boxing.
Okay, now when he got into boxing, who was his first fighters that he had that became famous?
That was Don Jordan in 1958.
He's a welterweight, from California?
Yeah, he was the first California-born welterweight.
Yes. Yeah, Don Jordan was in the era with you had Emil Griffith, you had Virgil Akins, you had Johnny Saxon, you had Tony DeMarco, and Don Jordan and Gaspar Indian Ortega. They were all in that division. They all those fighters today would have been all world champions. Don Jordan was one of the better ones.
And one of the maybe more colorful ones, there was been a book written about him, and Kirk Kerkorian, who at one point owned half of Las Vegas, actually also a former boxer, managed Don Jordan, and they had their hands full. They had their hands full with Don Jordan.
Yeah. Well, Don Jordan was a decent welterweight, but like you say, he was not that easy to train because of his habits.
Right.
Okay, now tell her that he had the heavyweight champion. He had the most famous of all, of course, was Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier, when he fought Muhammad Ali, and those great fights that they had, the trilogy. And can you tell us about your experiences being at those fights and watching Eddie Futch put his performance as far as training these great fighters? How was that experience?
Well, it's very interesting, Joe, because I lived in Sweden at the time.
Okay.
And the first fight, which between Ali and Frazier, was called The Fight, and it's a legendary fight. And I actually saw it on TV in Sweden because my dad was in sports, and he was fascinated by this fight.
Right.
And so it's actually the first fight that I saw.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, how about towards the end of his Joe Frazier's career? I know he had those last fights with Muhammad Ali. I know Joe Frazier was a heck of a fighter. I mean, Muhammad Ali could have not been great unless he beat a guy like Frazier. For you to be great, you had to fight somebody really competitive out there. And those fights is what made Muhammad Ali so great. People remember those fights with Joe Frazier.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. And it was also Eddie who persuaded Joe's management team to take on Kenny Norton as a sparring partner with the idea of the future. He could see the fight, way before the Ali fight materialized. He persuaded and Kenny Norton had only had one professional fight at the time, because he fought in the Marines. So he only had one fight before Eddie. He sought out Eddie in California at the time. So he was really good in terms of being a tall boxer as a sparring partner, and they became such friends. It's the reason why they never fought each other professionally, Joe and Ken.
Amazing. And he had a great, one of his last champions was Riddick Bowe, of which I refereed those fights when he fought Evander Holyfield. So I could tell you that Riddick Bowe was a tough fighter, a great shape. He only lost one fight. That was against Holyfield and the Fan Man, when the Fan Man came in. And Eddie Futch was training Riddick Bowe. He walk us a little bit before. How did Eddie Futch end up training Riddick Bowe?
Well, even though Riddick Bowe was a silver medalist in the Olympic Games, he was not favored really by the top trainers. He had a reputation, if you will, and Rock Newman saw the potential and sought out Eddie and had like a 3-hour conversation and finally made Eddie commit to at least look at Riddick Bowe. And so that was up in Reno. And so Eddie met up with Riddick and explained, how he worked things and what have you. And Hedgemon Lewis was assistant trainer at the time. Mm-hmm. So, and then Eddie said, well, you know what, I'm so sorry, but I got to leave town. I have stuff going on, but I'll be back in a few days. So the next morning, it was a big snowstorm in Reno, and Hedgemon and Eddie were, driving around little golf carts, and they were spying on Riddick Bowe, making sure that he indeed would do his road work.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And when they saw him coming huffing and puffing and all this snowstorm and everything, Eddie thought to himself, you know what, I'm going to give this guy a chance.
And he ended up training him for championship fights. He ended up becoming heavyweight champion of the world. He was one of the decent heavyweights, not the most disciplined as far as training is concerned, but he had a lot of potential, and he was almost undefeated his whole career, with the exception of the Fan Man with Holyfield at Caesar's Palace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a fight that you don't know how it could have gone without. I was actually up in Tahoe at the time. That it was the longest training camp Riddick Bowe had at the time, and it was, I guess, one of the hardest ones from what I heard of the camp members. And so it's hard to tell. Nobody will ever know. And yes, Riddick was a champion that really broke Eddie's heart, I must say, because he said that Riddick Bowe could have been one of the among the absolute greatest heavyweights. Had things not gone the way they did, and I know people like to sort of blame Rock Newman, but sometimes I think it's more the fame thing that gets in the way, So.
Okay. Well, Eva, you will let our fans, our listeners know that we really admired Eddie Futch's skills as a trainer, as a person.
Absolutely.
He was also like an undisputed champion in my book. We want to thank you so much for giving us this information that the fans I'm sure are pleasantly surprised to hear, especially that he was a basketball player and became out to be one of the best trainers in the history of boxing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Eva.
You're welcome. And by the way, Joe, Eddie thought the world of you, too.
Oh, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Eva Futch on the station with us today. Eva, thanks a million.
Okay, thank you, too, Joe. Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to go into a brief commercial. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back again to the Fairwood Firm Show here with Joe Cortez and my co-host, John Zimmel. It was a pleasure talking to Eva Futch.
Absolutely.
The wife of the deceased Eddie Futch, one of the greatest of all time as far as a trainer. He has many great fighters. Anyway, John, we're going to wrap it up a little bit with some of the fights that
absolutely.
Well,
we had some news. We were just talking about how global the sport of boxing has become, and it's kind of cool to that we had the two of the most exciting things that happened this week had to do with fighters from very different corners of the globe. One, we'll start with a fighter from Ghana that we've talked about quite a bit, Isaac Dogbe. That's the gentleman who was expected to be kind of someone padding the resume of Jesse Magdaleno, brother of Diego Magdaleno, who we've had on the show several times. And he stopped Jesse and looked really good, and then defended his title and looked good again. And he was looking great. And then he fought Navarrete. What's his first name?
Yeah, first name.
Me too.
A Mexican warrior.
Mexican warrior named Navarrete.
Tall, like a tall as the Empire State Building.
I know, for his weight class, he's very tall.
Featherweight, yeah.
And Dogbe, it looks like they're finalizing another rematch to fight again in May. Now, if Dogbe loses this fight, I mean, back-to-back wins or back-to-back losses like that, what do you think that's kind of the beginning of the end of his career?
Well, it's what happens with fighters, come from these foreign countries that they're not known to be, I mean, they have never reached the top. And now when they reach the top, they start too much party, hanging out with the wrong people, and they don't train as hard as they did before they got the title. Now they think they're the king of the hill. They drop their guards, and you know what? They get beat by an unknown fighter.
Yeah, that happens, man. And also, there's a thing that a lot of rumors out of their camp is that he'll only fight with his family. He'll only spar with his family. He'll only practice with his dad training him. And they don't have anybody that tall in that family. And so he doesn't bring in outside sparring partners. And it got him this far. So it's kind of hard to tell someone, hey, man, you're wrong. But at the same time, if you could advise Isaac Dogbe, would you tell him to maybe start bringing in guys who are bigger? Because you got to get used to. I mean, the height advantage was clearly
the height is different. It's different when you're always fighting guys throwing punches at your level, but you got to try to punch a guy who's about 3 feet taller than you.
Yeah,
I mean, come on,
No, and it really is though.
You guys are throwing punches up and not throwing punches down.
He's like twice his size.
I mean, yeah, the guy is huge. The guy Navarrete for a featherweight, he was like about 5'11".
Yeah, which is enormous.
Yeah. So anyway,
he's taller than Canelo.
But let's see what happens with Dogbe's career.
Also, we have Srisaket Rungvisai, the Thai phenom who came out of nowhere last year, beating Chocolatito Gonzalez, the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Yeah, and then knocking him out and having him carried off in a stretcher in the second fight.
Right.
It was kind of insane. Then he fought Juan Francisco Estrada in a very close, tight fight, and now they're rematching. I mean, you got to give Rungvisai some credit for taking on these rematches in both these instances where people said you didn't really beat him. He didn't just take the W and go home. He came back at him.
Yeah, Francisco Estrada really gave him a good fight. As a matter of fact, I thought Estrada won the fight.
Yeah, I like that.
But anyway, it could be a good rematch. It's good for the fans to see a good fight, and that's what we need in boxing.
I agree.
And we got the other one.
We got one more, which is fun. Canelo Alvarez says he's not ruling out moving up to 175 pounds. And this is like a 5'9", 175-pounder potentially. And fighting, Sergey Kovalev, a guy who we just saw a couple years, says they've known each other a long time. It's something he's considering. Who you got in that fight if it was announced right now?
I got to go with Canelo again.
That's
amazing. Even though that Canelo had never fought at that weight class. I mean, he took the 168-pound championship when he beat
Fielding
that a couple of
Scarecrow
months ago. And you know what? I mean, here we are. Sergey
Kovalev.
Kovalev is not a fighter of the past. He's really past his.
Yeah, prime Kovalev. I don't think.
He won't have a chance. But Canelo knows he could take this guy now.
I think so too.
This guy is really ready to be taken by anybody. It's about.
I love this new Canelo taking on everybody.
Yeah,
man. Well,
he could do it. He has a talent. He's powerful enough. He has a punch. He got the skills. He could
hit him right in that liver that he's been damaging all over.
Yeah. With the left hook to the liver that he has, is devastating.
It really is.
Yeah. Anyway, fans, you can tell you that boxing to us is like a big passion. We love it very much. I'm sure you guys do as well. We want to tell you that boxing is up on the rise again. If you guys want to catch us on.
Oh, you can catch us on every Monday at 1 p.m. on Facebook Live, on the Joe Cortez Facebook, Fair But Firm Facebook, or Into Boxing's Facebook. We're on iTunes. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere, man.
Okay, guys. Keep your guards up at all times. And remember, I'm fair but I'm firm. Touch them up.
Fair but firm with the Hall of Fame boxing referee. I'm Joe Cortez for all of Las Vegas. Come on, guys, let's touch them up. Clean fight. I'm Joe Cortez. Fair but firm.